Let us create this simple password strength checker using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. What this application does is basically check that your password is strong, basically the strength of your password. For example, if we type in 1, it's going to say 2 week. If we type in 2, it's still 2 week, but however, you can see number is included. So we need to also put a lowercase and it checks it, and then an uppercase as well, and then a special character, and then also it has to be at least 8 characters. And I'll add in that. And then you can see it says password strong, and here you can see the password that we just typed in. So let's get started. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'll create a new folder and I'm going to call it password strength checker. So after creating this, I'm going to open it in my VS Code. So once we are here, I'm going to create index.html, and then I'm also going to create styles.css. I'm going to do style.css, and also we're going to use JavaScript. So I'm going to create a file called script.js. Now we have our file set up. What we're going to do next is to create a HTML structure, which we're just going to do exclamation mark and press enter. And I'm going to give it a title of password strength checker. And I'm going to put a link, and I'm going to link our style.css. And then right below, I'm going to also link the script, which is going to be script.js. So now we have all our files set up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with HTML. So just below the body, I'm going to give a div class card, and inside card, I'm going to give it a heading, and the heading is going to be pretty much the same. Password strength checker. So below the heading, I'm going to give it a paragraph, and I'll call it subtitle, and I'll just say type a password to test how strong it is. Now after that, I'm going to do an input field. Okay, I'm going to give it a div class input wrapper, and inside the wrapper, I'm going to do input, and I'm going to give it a type of password. Then I'll give it an ID. I'm going to call this ID password input. Then I'll give it a placeholder, enter a password. So here I'm going to give it another on input, and I'm going to do check password. This is a function, this.value. And that is it. That's what we have for our input type. So just below the input, I'm going to create a button. So inside the button, I'm going to use an emoji. I don't know how you guys know how to type emoji. You basically type Windows semicolon. Yes, that's how you get an emoji on your VS Code. So I'm going to use the eye emoji. Let me see if I can find it here. It's right here. So I'm just going to put it there. So that's how you write emojis in VS Code. So I'm going to give my button a class, and I'm going to call it toggle btn, and I'll give it an on click. I'll give it a function called toggle visibility. Then I'll give it area label, and I'll just call it toggle password visibility. So after the input field, so you can see this is our code for the input field. We're going to work with the strength bar. So I'm just going to do strength bar. Here we are going to create a div, and I'm going to give it a class also called strength bar. And inside this div, I'm going to create 4 different divs. So I'm going to give it div class called segment, and I'll give it an ID of segment 1. So I'll just do seg1, and this same segment, I'm going to just duplicate it. We are going to do 4 of them. So we shall just change the IDs, segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, and segment 4. And that is what we have for the segment bar. And then we're going to create another label score. This is where you see the weak, the strong, the good. So in the label score, I'm going to create a div, and I'll give it a class strength info, and I'll give it a span, enter, password to begin. And this span, I'm going to give it an ID. It's going to be strength label. Then I'll create another span tag, and this I'm going to give it an ID of score display. So I'll just do score display, and this is it. And then just below, I'm just going to do HRR, and I'm going to give it a class divider. All right, so after the label score, I'm going to create the criteria checklist. So I'll just type here criteria checklist. And here I'm just going to create a paragraph and I'm going to type criteria. So let me give this paragraph a class. I'm going to call this criteria title. Then below it, I'll create a div and I'm going to give it a class criteria list. And I'll also give it an ID. And I'm going to call that ID criteria list as well. But let's use camel case here. That is it. So now this is where the items generated will appear. I hope that makes sense. And this is our HTML in just 44 lines of code. So I'll open the live server. And now you can see this is our HTML. Now it's time to style it. Let's give it some style using CSS. So I'll go to my CSS file and I'm going to start with the general styling, which is going to be margin 0, padding 0, and I'll give it box sizing, border box. All right, so let me do this side by side so you guys can see the changes in real time. So now that you can see the changes in real time, let's go ahead and style our body. And we're going to start with a font family. For the font family, I'm going to do Sego UI, and I'm just going to do that sans serif. Let me remove this Tahoma thing. Yeah, that's what we have. And I'm going to give it a background of F5, F5, F5. And I'll also give it a minimum height, which is going to be 100 vertical height, as well as a display, which we're going to be working with Flex. And I'm going to do align items, and I'll place them in the center. And then justify content. We're going to go with center. And then I'll give them a padding, which is going to be 1 rem. And that is it for the body. So let me just expand it. And you see, that's what we have. So now let's proceed and style the card. So let me just write a comment here. Let's style the card as well. For the card, and I'm going to give it a background of white. Then I'll give it a border, 1 pixels, solid. Then I'll give it a color, E0, 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 E0. I'll give it a border radius of 12 pixels. I'll give it a padding of 2 rem. And I'm going to give it a width of 100%. Then I'll give it a maximum width of 420 pixels. Now let us style the card H1, that is the heading. I'm going to give it a font size of 20 pixels. I'll give it a font weight 600. And I'm going to give it a color 1A, 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 1A. Then margin bottom. The color looks a bit darker. Let me see. We have to remove that extra one. Oh yeah, that is it. So let's do margin bottom, and I'm going to give it 4 pixels. Now, that is it. We are going to style the input wrapper. This is where we are going to put the button inside the input. This button, you see. So it's still under the card. So I'll do input wrapper. So I'm going to position it relative, and I'm going to give it margin bottom 1 rem. Then also we need to style the input wrapper, and we are styling the input itself. So here I'm going to give it a width of 100%. And let's also give it a font size of 15 pixels. Let me give it a border, 1 pixels, solid, D0, D0, D0. Then I'll give it a border radius of 8 pixels. And let's do outline, and let's give it none. And then I'll do transition. I'll just do border color 0.2 seconds. Now let us style the input wrapper, and we're going to do input focus here. So just give it a border color. Let's give it a blue color, 378A DD. Now for this particular border color, it will basically highlight the border on focus. That is it. Let us style the I button. Let me see. I'm going to give it a position. Oh, sorry. The class is called toggle button. And I'm going to give it position absolute. I'll give it right 10 pixels. Top 50%. Transform. Translate negative 50. %. I'm going to give it a background, none. Also border, I'm going to give it none. I'll say cursor, pointer, font size. Let's work with 18 pixels. Color, I'll give it AAA. Padding, 4 pixels. Line height, 1. So you can see all these are supposed to be in the card. So let's go back and check our HTML. So this card class has to close at the end of this entire thing because it is what is closing it. Yeah. So now you can see the difference. That was the error that we are working with, I think. Yes. So this card, this div card, the wrapper is inside it. Okay. Let's just format our HTML a little bit. Please watch out for these errors. Yeah. Yes, so now that is how our thing looks. Okay. All right, now let's go back to our CSS. So we're going to style our toggle button on hover. So this we're just going to give it a color and let's give it 555. Now that is it. So let us style the strength bar. Strength bar. I'm going to give it a display flex. So I think this class is supposed to be the toggle. Let's just confirm the class here for the toggle button. What class are we using? Make sure that the classes you're using is, oh yes, it's toggle btn. Guys, it's toggle btn. So I'm going to change this to toggle btn. Now you can see. Then also I'm going to do this. Toggle btn. Then the input. So if you look at our input, it's small. Let's give it some padding. So right here, let's give it padding, 10 pixels, 40 pixels, 10 pixels, 14 pixels. Yeah, or let's increase it a bit to 44. All right, let's go back where we stopped. We are in the strength bar. So we already gave it a display of flex, and I'm going to give it a gap of 6 pixels, and then margin bottom, let's give it 8 pixels. Yeah, so let's be careful with spellings and some errors that are happening. So the next thing is we are going to style the segment. I just hope the spelling is right. And I'm going to give it flex 1. So each segment is going to be having an equal width. So I'll give it a height of 6 pixels, and I'm also going to give it a border radius of 99 pixels, and I'm going to give it a background. Let's repeat the EO. Now this is our default gray, so now you can see it's showing there. The segments are showing. And then I'm going to give it transition. I'll say background 0.3 seconds. And let's go with ease. So now this is what is going to be showing the strength of the password. Yeah. Now I've noticed that this also has a very small space. So we may have to add a style for it as well. So just below the card H1, let us also style the card. And the class was subtitle. Make sure you add that. So let's do font size. Let's give it 14 pixels. And also let's give it a color. I'll give it 888. And let's give it a margin bottom, since that is, I'm going to give it 1.5 rem. At least now it makes sense, okay? Yeah. So make sure that you add this section as well. Now let us proceed down where we were. And let us style the strength, the labels. Now for the strength, let's do display. Let's start with the class. We're going to go with the strength. Let's just check the class here. I'm making so many mistakes. So we are going to start with a strength info. Yes, it's here. So I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to do strength info. And I'll do display flex. I'm going to justify content. Let's work with space between. And I'm going to line items center. Then I'll give it a margin bottom 1.25 rem. Yes. So now we also have to style the strength label, which is I think an ID. Yes, let us style this as well. I'm afraid to type now because I'm making so many errors. So for IDs, it starts with hash. Yes. So let's give it a font size, 13 pixels. font weight 600, color I'm gonna give it AAA. So now this it's gonna be updated while we are working with the JavaScript, right? Yes, so now that's what we have. Then also I'm gonna have to style the score display. That is the score that's gonna be displayed here. It's also an ID. Let me just check with my HTML. Yes, it's here. So I'm just gonna copy this ID name and I'll paste it there. All right, so let us style the score display. We are going to say font size 12 pixels, and I'm gonna give it a color of AAA. That is it. Then below, let us now style the criteria list. For the criteria list, let us start with a divider. I'm gonna give it a border none, and I'm gonna give it border top 1 pixels solid EF. Margin bottom is 1 rem. So let us say criteria title, font size 11 pixels, font weight, let's go with 600, text transform, let's work with uppercase, letter spacing 0.06 rem, then I'll give it a color AAA, margin bottom 10 pixels. So we have criteria list. We're gonna say display flex direction. Let's work with column and let's give it a gap of 8 pixels. So let us do the one row for the criteria list. So we shall say criterion. Let us go with display flex. We're gonna align items center. Let's give it a gap of 9 pixels. Font size 13 pixels. Then let us tell the criterion icon. Font size 16 pixels. Flex shrink. Let's give it 0. So now let us style the color classes. This one is going to be toggled by the JS. So we're going to do icon.animate. We're going to give it a color CCC. Then also let us add before the animate, let us also do the icon. This is if the conditions are met. If the conditions are met, we are going to give it a color over green. Let's do 639922. So when a rule is satisfied, it's going to be this color. If it's satisfied, it's going to be green. If a particular one is satisfied, it's going to be also C. And then it's also going to be gray when not satisfied. Yeah. So let us do that. We're going to do class criterion dot label dot met. So for this, we're going to give it a color 1A, 1A, 1A. Then also let's work with unmet. So we shall say criterion dot label dot unmet. We're gonna do color AAA. I think that is what we have for our CSS. This is what we have. So now we can type the password. However, to activate this criteria, we need to write some JavaScript for our strength checker to perfectly work. So now let us proceed and go to our JavaScript. Now I'm going to go to my files and then I'm going to go to the script.js. First, we're going to make sure that our script.js is linked. Our style is linked, perfectly working, and then now we are in script.js. Let me just give you the basic steps before we even write the JavaScript. So we're gonna, step 1, we need to define the criteria. So we're going to define the criteria. So to define the criteria, we are going to create an array and let's call it criteria is equal to, we're going to use that. So we shall open brackets and our first set of array is the label, and that label is going to be at least 8 characters. That is the first criteria. Put a comma and then we're going to do test. We are going to test password equal to or greater than password dot length should be greater or equal to 8. Now this basically is the length that gives us the number of characters in the string. Now let's put a comma here and let's create another criteria. The next criteria is going to be label. Let us give it a label and let's do uppercase letter. Now uppercase letter has to be A to Z in caps. I'll put a comma and then I'm also going to give it, I'm going to ask it to test. It's going to test the password. the password should be equal or greater than. Now we are working with a string here. So I'm going to do slash and I'll put that boxy bracket. We're going to do A to Z. Then I'll put that slash. Then I'll do dot test password. Now this basically will match the uppercase letter from A through Z. Now our next label is going to be the lowercase. This is basically our next criteria. So I'm going to say label. I'll do lowercase letter. Now lowercase is going to be basically A to Z. I'll put a comma and then we're going to repeat the same. We shall say test. Let us test for the password. The password should be equal to A to Z dot test password, since these ones are a string. So this also will match the lowercase letters through A to Z. Then the next criteria is going to be number. So let's do label and let's give it number 0 to 9, comma. Okay, so let us put this in a bracket. You can see it saying there's an error. I'm just going to do that. We are working with arrays. And I'll do test password should be equal to, there should be numbers from 0 to 9 dot test password. Now this is number, this should be number. This label is gonna match for digits from 0 to 9. And then the next array we are creating is for the special character. So we shall just do label special character. Now special characters are like the exclamation mark, the @ the hash, the $sign, the %, etc. So we're gonna test password should be equal to, now what we are going to do here, we're gonna put anything that is not a letter or a number. So we have this sign, which basically means inside the square brackets, which means not. So we are not going to include the A to Z in caps lock. We are not going to include the A to Z in small letters, and we're not going to include the 0 to 9, which are the numbers. So that's what that is what it basically means. And then we're going to do dot test password. And that is it for the criteria. So we are done with setting the criteria. Now, our step 2 is going to be basically defining the strength levels. Now for this, we are going to work with the different segments that we created in HTML. We are going to do const levels equal to, let's create that array, and then we shall say now, comma, then let us create the segments. So we are going to go with segs, which is 1. For 1, I'm going to give it a color, and the color, we are going to give it E24BA, E24B4A. Yes, it's going to be red, and then I'll say comma, and the label is going to be too weak. So this is the color that will display if your password is too weak. Now, this is like 1 out of 5 of the criteria, you know. This is like 1 out of 5 criteria. I'm going to repeat the same for the rest of the segments, and I'll just change the color codes, and also that I'll change only the label. So let me remove this. This is segment 2, and the color is going to still be the same, too weak. Okay, this is the spelling of weak. I mean this week. And then for this one, I'm just going to go with week. Segment 1 and 2 is going to be the same. And then let me just copy this. Segment 3 and segment 4. I think that is all. So I'm going to change this to 3. I'm going to change this to 4. And then I'm going to paste it. We're going to have 2 different 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then the color, let us change the color. For segment 3, let us give it a color of EF9F27. That is orange. And then the label is going to be fair. Then for 4, we are going to change the color to something bluish. So we shall change it to 378A DD. And then we are going to change the label to good. And then for segment 4, this is now when everything is perfect. Let's make it green. So it's going to be #639922. Then the label is going to be strong. And this is 5 out of 5 criteria. So we have created the criteria. We have created the strength, the label strength. Now I think the next thing is to create the main function. Let me just say step 3, the main function. So for the main function, I'm going to create a function, and it's going to be called check password. And it's going to be password. Now for this, it's going to count how many criteria the password satisfies. And then this function is also going to filter. It's only going to keep the items that were in the test function, and then it will return true. And then also the length will keep how many were kept. So now what we are going to do is we're going to say const score equals to password dot length. This is what is going to test the criteria. So now we're going to say it's equal to 0 or 0 colon, and then we shall say criteria dot filter, which is the array we are filtering, C, which is equal to C dot test. We are testing the password. And then outside this, we're going to do password dot length, which is the property we've been working with. And that is it. So now when we do this, we can just have to look up for the matching objects. So we shall say const level equals to, let's grab this levels, and we find the respective score, which is the number, which is the object, and that is it. Now we are still working inside this function. The next thing we need to do is we need to update the strength bar that shows the strength of the password. That means we are going to loop through the segments 1 to 4 that we just created. So in this case, we are going to create a condition. So we shall say for let I equal to 1, I should be greater or equal to 4. I is going to be an increment. So what we are going to do is we're going to say const segment equals to document dot get element by ID, which we created, and our ID is seg. Then out we're going to do plus I. So we shall say if level is greater or equal to level dot that property, we are going to say segment dot style background dot style dot background, which is equal to a level dot color. This will fill it with the level color. And if that condition is not true, we're going to say else segment dot style dot background will be equal to, let's give it that color, EO. This will basically reset it to gray. So now after this, just below this, we're going to update the strength also. So to do this, I'll say const label is equal to document dot get element by ID, and we are going to use our ID which is in the HTML, which is basically called strength label. So make sure that the spelling is perfect, otherwise you go back to the HTML and check. Then we shall also say const display is equal to document dot get element by ID again, and also we are going to get our ID, which is score display. I hope the spelling is right. Now we are going to create an if statement. For the if statement, we shall say if level, let's say label dot text content is equal to label dot label. It's level dot label. Please don't make an error there. Then we shall also say label dot style dot color is equal to level dot color. And then we are going to do the criterias. So we shall say display dot text content. After it has detected the text content that have been input, we're going to do score plus, and then we're going to put that label, which is a string, 5 criteria met. Now this is when everything is met. We shall say else label dot text content is equal to enter a password to begin. Then we shall say label dot style dot color, which is equal to AAA. Then display dot text content will equal to an empty array, an empty string rather. Now this is it. So just below this, now the next thing we can do is we need to update the criteria list, and to update the criteria list, we shall just say render criteria, which is password. Now to do that, we need to create that function render criteria, which will bring us to step 4. Step 4 is just to render the criteria list. So to do this, I'm going to create a function, and we're going to call it render criteria password. And I'll say const container is equal to document dot get element by ID. And we're going to do the ID, which is criteria list in our HTML, if you remember. So we shall say container dot inner HTML, which will be equal to criteria dot map. We're going to say C that is an array there. So we shall say const met is equal to password.length greater than 0 and c.test. So we're going to test the password. Now, if it does this, we are going to say return. So we're going to add some block of HTML. And to do that, we are going to use the backslash. I hope you know where that backslash is on your keyboard. So I'm going to go with return. So this is the backslash. Let us close it here. We're going to put everything in here, which is going to be HTML. So we're going to create that div, the class that we already styled in the CSS. And that class is called criterion. I hope the spelling is right. And I'm going to close this div. Let me just do this /div. Let me press enter. So let me add some more HTML here. We're going to say span, and the class is also going to be icon. And we're going to say if, that's the $, it's met. We put that class met and colon and met. So we're going to close this, and also we're going to close that. Then we're going to close our span as well. Greater, we do the $, and we're going to say met. So we're going to put a checkbox. Now, do you remember how we put a checkbox? You're going to press Windows, that. So you can choose a checkbox of your choice. There is this. Let me see. Do I like it? No, I don't like this. Let's choose another. So you can just search here. So I think I like this. So I'll choose that one. And then right, I'll put a colon. And we're going to put another emoji. Windows, that. It's just going to be a plain circle. Let's look for that. I think it's this one. That. Yes. Then after this, we are going to close our span. So I'll do that. Span. Then below that, we shall create another span tag. And the class, we're going to give it, I hope I closed this class though. Oh yes, I did. I closed it. The next is class. I'm going to do label met colon and met. And this closes here, as you can see. Let's close the span tag, and we shall say c.label, and we close that, and then also let us close the span tag. Span, that is it. So let me just do that. So after this, we are going to say dot join, and we do an empty string, and that is it. Now, so after this, I think everything should be working. But before we proceed, let us show or hide the password toggle in the form. So let me just say step 5, show hide password. So we already created a function, which was toggle visibility. And I'm going to say const input is equal to document dot get elements by ID password input. If input dot type is equal to password, let us do input dot type is equal to text. Else input dot type equals to password. So now I think that is it. So we can just initialize the function here. So to initialize it, we shall just say render criteria. And that is it. So let us go and check if our app is. I'm just going to go here to my HTML and open with live server. This is what we have. So let me try to enter a password. It's not working. So if I show the password, it's showing. Now we need to check the strengths in real time. So let us just check our JavaScript. So the criteria list is what is not showing. So let us just begin and check out for the error here. So let us check the main function equal to 0 and 0 criteria.filter .length. Then here we are looking out the matching levels. Okay, so here is get element by ID, and the ID here is seg. I think I got the error. It's seg, not segs. We are picking this from the ID seg. So let's go ahead and change this to seg. This is what's going to be segs. Okay. Yeah. So let's check that and see. Yeah, you can see that. It works. 2, let's see. E, okay. Let's do special character. Okay. Then let's do uppercase. Yes, you can see that. Criteria 5 out of 5 met. And then let's do at least 8 characters. And perfect. And that is how it's supposed to work. So if I see, you can see this is the password that I have. So let me try this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, then uppercase, then at least 8 characters. Yes. So basically, this is how you can build a very simple password strength checker using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let me just go through the code one more time. So what we're going to do is, this is our HTML. So we shall just create input fields and give them a couple of styles and IDs. And the strength bar is this. This is the strength bar, this bar that shows, 2 week, that. So you can also hide the password. And this is what we are calling the strength bar. And we have the label score. This is where you enter the password. And then we have the criteria checklist. And the criteria checklist is just this. Yeah. So I'll take you through the JavaScript. This is where the functionality is being. We are going to define the criteria, which is just a set of array to say that, okay, this is the criteria to meet this standard. And then we shall define the different strength levels, which is strong, weak, good, fair, and 2 weak. Then after that, we shall create the main function. And the main function is what is gonna be checking the password, whether it meets this criteria that we created. And then after that, we can update on, once someone puts a score list, we can update the strength, and then we just have to render the criteria list, that is if it all meets the criteria. Yes, so basically that is it, and this code is going to be on GitHub. Let me know in the comments what you've learned from this session, and then feel free to modify this to the way you want. You can add in something extra in it, but this is one of the projects that you can use to perfectly better your JavaScript skills, as it's one of the basic beginner projects. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.